Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Bailey here, and welcome to my top 15 best movies of 2021. Yep, we're finally at the end of the year, and holy crap, I did not think I was going to be able to make a top 15, if I'm being honest. Honestly, there were so many great films this year. Some were pretty surprising to me. Some I actually wasn't planning on seeing, but I saw them and they actually ended up being really great. And like I said, my friend Matthew Davis Media just posted his review of at some point today. Go check out his review. Some of the movies he saw, unfortunately, I did not. So obviously our lists are going to be a little different. But anyways, let's get on to my picks for the top 15 best movies of 2021. But before we get into my picks for the top 15, I gotta give a shout out to a few honorable mentions. Now, some of these honorable mentions, like I said, I did not expect to see this year, but I actually ended up seeing them and it ended up being really well. So we got Ron's Gone Wrong, Tick Tick Boom, Venom Let There Be Carnage, Black Widow, and The Last Duel. Yep, those are my 5 honorable mentions this year. And like I said, they were great films, just not as great as these 15. Without further ado, let's get into it. So at number 15 is Dune. Yep, this is a movie that is just part 1 of a series, and it basically follows, I think similar to some movie franchises that are based on books, this is based off of a book. And I have to admit, I never read the Dune books, so I still didn't know what to expect out of this movie, but I went to see it. Well, actually, I kind of saw it on HBO Max. Really, I didn't see it in the theaters, but I saw it at home, and it actually ended up being pretty well. Like I said, the story is great. You got so many different A-list actors in this movie, and a few of them are actually coming up in future projects down the road for their own companies. Like, I know Jason Momoa is now coming in Aquaman 2. Oscar Isaac is coming up in Moon Knight. There's just so many different characters that were in this movie that where their actors are in other movies. But I had a great time with this movie, and I highly recommend checking this movie out when you get a chance. At number 14 is F9. Yep, Fast and Furious 9 is a movie that I honestly was surprised at. There were so many people that went to see this movie, and now I know there's been a lot of controversies revolving around the whole Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson feud that apparently happened back when F8 came out, and he's been made it solely clear that he does not want to reappear for F10, for Fast 10 or whatever it's going to be called. But I still thought this was a decent film, even with the inclusion of John Cena, who's kind of like I'm not saying he's a replacement for Dwayne Johnson, because if you look and do your research, they're both wrestlers. And I'm not sure if that was their intention, to bring Dwayne Johnson in as sort of a replacement, or bring John Cena in as a replacement for Dwayne Johnson, but I still thought this was okay film. Like I said, I wasn't really a big fan of the Fast and Furious franchise, but after seeing this movie, I kind of had my doubts. At number 13 is a movie that I was surprised didn't do very well in the box office, and that was The Suicide Squad. This time it's being directed by James Gunn, director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I was really surprised at him. The only reason why he directed this movie was because he got let go by Marvel for a short period of time, but then they brought him back. But during that time, he had already found work in Warner Brothers for this movie, And it's a shame that his movie did not do very well, not just because of the whole HBO Max theaters release strategy, but again, like I said, there was some controversy regarding the producer of the films that was disappointing a lot of fans, not just of the Warner Brothers films, but they were mainly pissing off a lot of Johnny Depp fans in regards to the whole thing with Amber Heard still being attached to Aquaman 2, which is why I brought Jason Momoa up in this video, but I'm not talking about that. Now, I honestly have to admit, this was a much better Suicide Squad film than the original one back in 2016, without a doubt. I mean, it's just a shame it had to be like this in the pandemic era, having that whole day-and-date release thing, which Warner Brothers has learned from that mistake. They're not going to do that with any of their films next year, as far as I'm aware. But, like I said, Suicide Squad was great, and I can't wait to see Idris Elba play another iconic comic book / video game character, being Knuckles the Echidna in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So, at number 12 is Mortal Kombat. Yep, you heard me correctly. This is the rated R version of Mortal Kombat. And I know what most fans of Matthew Davis Media are going to say, and even him himself was kind of surprised at me. But this is rated R, and I started watching a few rated R movies this year, which I did not think I would, but I did, and these Mortal Kombat definitely deserves to be rated R, especially when I played the game or whatever, and I see all the blood and gore and all this fighting techniques. You would think a movie like this should be rated R, and it was, and this was a lot better than those movies that came out years ago, because those were all PG-13, and the effects were not as great in those movies as they were in this. This movie I thought was amazing, and I'm really excited to see the future of the Mortal Kombat franchise if they do decide to make a sequel for this. Speaking of Dwayne Johnson, at my number 11 is Jungle Cruise. Yep, Jungle Cruise was a crazy film, and again, because of the whole day-and-date release thing, they basically did it where it was released on Disney Plus for a $30 premium access purchase, as well as in theaters. And they kind of did the same thing with Black Widow, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter. Jungle Cruise stars Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, and they are just a terrific duo in this movie. It's based off of another Disney park ride like Pirates of the Caribbean was, and I thought it was a decent film. It's definitely not as good as the Pirates of the Caribbean films, though, I can guarantee that. But it's still a great film, and but the reason why I didn't make the top 10 was just because it's not as good of a theme park ride-based movie as Pirates of the Caribbean was. And now, surprisingly, at number 10 is Cruella. Yep, I know what you're going to say. Wow, Cruella. I mean, yes, I get that it's basically them doing what they did with Venom, Let There Be Carnage, where they're basically taking a villain and trying to turn them into an anti-hero of some kind. Well, to be fair, this movie kind of made it seem that way, where they're turning Cruella into somewhat of an anti-hero of her own film. However, some of the aspects of this film I thought really worked, and how it developed her character in a more villainous role for the future, because they are developing a sequel, which, if I learned anything from how they did the Maleficent films, with Maleficent Mistress of Evil, they might do a similar road to that. However, unlike that, where the first movie was based on her origin story, but just made it to where she's an anti-hero, they might do it where in Cruella 2, she truly is the villain, and they kind of take off the story of 101 Dalmatians, but still keep it solely focused on her as much as the puppies from the original classic film. And I gotta say, Emma Stone was amazing in this movie. She really went all out. And I was surprised when I found out Glenn Close actually had a say as an executive producer on this film. She's the original live-action Cruella, for those of you who did not know. Now, at number 9 is a movie that was not released in theaters, unfortunately, but as you can see, it is Vivo. Yep, Vivo is a Sony animation film that was released on Netflix that I was surprisingly curious about this movie. But this isn't the only Sony animated film I saw this year that I will talk about in a second. But Vivo starred Lin-Manuel Miranda, the iconic music developer who writes songs for classic Disney films like Moana and a bunch of other stuff. He was amazing singing his own songs as Vivo, who is somewhat of a, I forgot what type of monkey he is, but he's basically a singing monkey who goes on this journey to understand the true meaning of friendship, loss, and all that sort of stuff, learning how to work with somebody else than his iconic partner that we see mainly in the trailers. But Vivo was a great musical film, and I cannot wait to see what they do next with Lin-Manuel Miranda. As you can see, my next movie at number 8 is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Yep, I was basically coerced by my cousin Tyler Bailey to watch this movie, because I even tried to get him to see the one I just rated being Vivo. He did. He didn't like it as much as Mitchells of the Machines, surprisingly. But because of how he did that, I decided to give this movie a much higher rating than Vivo. And like I said, they're both by the same company, Sony Animation. I actually thought this movie ended up being really well developed, actually. I mean, the story, the characters, and to be fair, the movie was originally supposed to be called Connected, I think, but then they switched it up, and I'm glad they did, because it makes a lot more sense with this title. It's a family of Mitchells versus all types of machines, and they're learning how to adapt with what they got instead of always being stuck on technology, which I can tell you a lot of us young people in the world are addicted to technology. So having to have humans go against machines, pretty surprising story and surprisingly a great film. So at number 7, I have ShangChi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Yep, this is the first real Marvel movie out of 4 that was released this year that is in my top 10. And I have to admit, this movie definitely, made the agony of what happened in the events of Iron Man 3 completely disappear and fix that issue. And what I'm referring to is the whole fake out Mandarin thing, where it's revealed that Ben Kingsley was just playing an actor named Trevor Slattery who was playing a version of the Mandarin, but not the real one, obviously. Now, Tony Leung is the real Mandarin in this movie. I could not think of a better way to do his character, and ShangChi, great way to introduce the character, and also kind of have him connect somewhat to the Masters of the Mystic Arts and the Wizards of Camartage, because we see how Wong shows up in this movie, who we do find out later on is revealed to be the new Sorcerer Supreme and not Doctor Strange, and I will explain that in a little bit for another movie. So at number 6, I have Luca. Now, this is the only Pixar film that got released this year. Unfortunately, it wasn't in theaters, which kind of sucks, but I did see it on Disney Plus, and I have to admit, this is a really good, original Pixar film. it tells the story of Luca and Alberto, two sea monsters who become best friends, who go up to the human world, and however, they don't want to be reckless, because then they find out that the little town that they visit is obsessed with killing and hunting sea monsters, who in their case is what they are, kind of. And we also kind of see a connection between the human girl that they meet, and it also kind of feels like there is a hidden message in here about not just friendship, but other types of relationships. But I honestly thought this movie was a decent original Disney Pixar film. So at number 5, I have Free Guy. Yep, this came as quite a surprising film to me. Free Guy stars Ryan Reynolds as this non-playable character in a video game known as Free City, but as an AI, he discovers that the world around him, and that he comes alive, and he plays the game, and he gets the unlikely help of a few real people who try to help him get the other non-playable characters to break free from this whole loop that they've got going. And I gotta admit, this was the first movie that I thought was insanely surprising. There were so many different references that suddenly came at the end, because now that 20th Century Fox is owned by Disney, they can put some Disney related stuff in these movies, and that was kind of surprising. It really worked for this movie, and there were a lot of different cameos in this movie that I myself was not expecting, especially video game YouTuber Jacksepticeye. He's the one I started watching when I first started this channel, and when I saw him in this movie, I was really excited to see him. And at number 4 is Ghostbusters Afterlife. This movie was the third installment of the original 2 films from the 80s, and I am so glad they decided to go this route and not try to make a sequel to the 2016 film. Now, granted, I know there are a few people who did like this film. My good friend Matthew Davis thought it was okay. However, I just thought it was kind of strange how they just decided to completely reboot the franchise, and a lot of original fans did not like that. And like I said, me and him didn't grow up with the original films, so that's kind of why he was a little hesitant on hating this movie. Now, I did watch the original films. I thought they were great. This movie, I thought, steered away from the original fans, but the third movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, really brought back the nostalgia of the original fans, which, again, there is another movie on this list that is similar with the nostalgic feelings. At number 3, I have Raya and the Last Dragon. This was the first Disney film to get released this year, and the first Disney animation film, that is. It tells the story of Raya, who lives in this world where it's divided into 5 different groups, and her group is known as Heart, which is basically the parts of a dragon. She travels the world looking for gem pieces, along with the help of the last dragon, known as Raya. That's the name of the girl. Sisu is the name of the dragon, played by Awkwafina. She helps Raya realize the importance of learning to trust the people around you, to work together, and I thought this was a crazy film, and I cannot wait to see if they ever continue with similar stories like that. And now at my number 2 spot, I've got a movie that, again, was a pretty big surprise to me, and that is the second Disney animation film to get released, Encanto. And like Vivo, this movie songs was written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The story, the characters, I really thought this movie was insane. In my opinion, one of the best animated film of the year. I mean, I really love how they tell these original stories. And I'm curious to see what the future holds for Disney animation. But for now, let's get to my number one film. And at my number one best movie of the year, you can tell just by the background, it is Spiderman No Way Home. Yep, this was by far my favorite film of the year. We finally got it. I didn't think it was gonna get released this year, especially with all the delays on other films, that I was surprised that they managed to release it. And even though they did release it, it actually ended up breaking all sorts of records. It not only did it do really well on its opening weekend, but it literally, in just 11 to 12 days of its release, managed to hit $1 billion worldwide. In just 11 days, in less than 2 weeks. Worldwide, the movie hit $1 billion. And last time I checked it, it was at $1.181 billion. That is insane. It's already surpassed the numbers for Far From Home, which is the second highest Sony Spider-Man film to date. And for this movie to beat that in a post-pandemic era, it broke all kinds of records. Like I said, being the first movie to hit over $1 billion, be the first movie to do that in a post-pandemic era. And like I said, what really made it work was the whole nostalgic factor with old villains from past movies coming back. Like, we got to see William Dafoe back as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina back as Dr. Octavius. We even saw Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman. And we got Reeves Ifans and Jamie Foxx back as Lizard and Electro. I was so surprised at this film. And without giving away any true spoilers, I mean, I feel like by now you guys should have seen the movie. Holy crap. We didn't get one, not two, but three versions of Peter Parker in this movie, played by, once again, being a nostalgic film, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield made appearances in these movies, or in this movie. I was so surprised at this film. It was insane that so many different aspects of this movie were on the money, on the mark. I think this is the one film that saved this year during the pandemic. We got so many people that came back to the theaters because of this movie, which is why I have it marked as my best film of the year. And that is saying something. So there you have it, everyone. That is my list for the top 15 best movies of 2021. Can't wait to see how many movies I see next year, because I think in the grand total of movies that I saw this year, I saw a grand total of 38 films. That's definitely more than I've seen on any of the years that I've technically been on YouTube, at least. So it's basically around the same number of movies as 2019 and 2018. So anyways, that's all for now in this video, and I will see all you dudes and ladies in the next video.